Hi, my name is Braden Harrington, and I'm 13 years old. And without Joe Biden, I wouldn't be talking to you today. About a few months ago, I met him in New Hampshire. He told me that we were members of the same club. We stutter. It was really amazing to hear that someone like me became vice president. He told me about a book of poems by Yeats he would read out loud to practice. He showed me how he marks his addresses to make them easier to say out loud. So I did the same thing today.
I'm Linda Hirsch, and this is EdCast, a program created and produced by educators for everyone interested in education. President Joe Biden has put a public face on stuttering, a communications disorder suffered by 3 million Americans. I count myself among those Americans, and while my stammer is less pronounced today, preparing for this show brought back many of my own struggles as a stutterer. Today on EdCast, I'll speak with a speech pathologist to learn about changing attitudes and treatments, as well as what parents and teachers can do to help children who stammer. We'll also hear from a Bronx teenager who just won 3rd place in a speech competition, even though he too is a stutterer. Coming up now on EdCast. Joining me today is Chaya Goldstein. She's a stuttering specialist at the American Institute for Stuttering in New York City. She co-leads the Manhattan National Stuttering Association support group for adults who stutter. She coordinates the Stepping Up mentoring program for kids who stutter and co-hosts the Stutter Talk podcast. She cares deeply about stuttering education and stuttering in the workplace. She is also a CUNY graduate of Queens College and Lehman College. Thank you so much for joining us today on the program. As you know, President Biden has been very public about his own issues with speech and stuttering. And I think today is maybe the first time on EdCast that I ever acknowledged that I too was a stutterer and still sometimes am a stutterer. So this is a very important show. And as a speech pathologist, I think you're familiar with the condition on both a professional and a personal level as well. So what I want to do today is really try to educate people who stutter and those who don't about what we know about stuttering and what the attitudes and treatment are about it right now. So let me begin by asking you, what is stuttering?
Sure. So before I even start, I want to say that I'm a person who stutters, and as you're going to hear, and as I'm doing right now, I stutter. And it's actually a choice right now that I'm going to let it be and let it rip if need be, because part of becoming more comfortable with stuttering is being open about it and working with it rather than running from it. So having said that, what is stuttering? In simple terms, it's the repetition, prolongation, or a block, okay? That's what more or less when we hear someone talk and then we hear the sound repeat, prolong, or completely block, that's what a stutter is. However, we know that stuttering is much more than meets the eye, and it's actually a communication disorder that impacts a person's overall quality of life. And I can go in to talk deeper about what is it that more than meets the eye, but I want to check in if there's anything that you wanted to ask about that.
Well, you mentioned something once to me about stuttering being like an onion. What does that mean exactly?
That's a great question. So stuttering has many, many layers, or actually the core stutter is just that, the core. So think of an onion, and at the center would be the basic, easy, forward repetition, that little glitch of a moment when you stutter. Okay, now it doesn't feel good when we stutter, and so the body comes in and swoops in and says, I'm gonna help you out. And the help is in forms of tricks, negative tricks, or even, which is the next layer of the onion, or even the next layer is then avoiding. And so even though someone's core stutter might be a small little repetition, prolongation, maybe even that little block, it doesn't feel good. And so we build all these layers, and that's actually when someone might start showing all these other symptoms that are not part of that core stutter in the center, but just a way of trying to get out of stuttering because it doesn't feel good.
Yeah, at what age does stuttering usually appear?
Generally between the ages of 2.5 and 5. It can happen after that age, but generally during the time that language is booming.
And what would be some of the telltale signs?
The telltale signs would be, like I said, the repetitions, prolongations, and that block. It's very important to know that stuttering is very common within those language learning years, and so not to be too worried. However, if we see a child is stuttering and it's increasing, and we see that the tension and that the frustration is increasing, then we might consider this to be an issue. And there are other risk factors that we would look at as well.
Does a child ever outgrow stuttering?
It's a great question. Yes and no, it depends. So we know that up to 80% of children spontaneously recover, and we have 20% who don't. So the question, well, what is it about these children that stuttering persists?
And what do we know about causes of stuttering?
Short answer, we don't fully know. Okay, longer answer is multifactorial. And so, like I said, in terms of those children that do stutter, we often look at the temperament, their language, how it's coming in. Too much or too little actually can impact their very sensitive system. But what we do know is that it's neurobiological. Oftentimes we are predisposed, those of us who stutter, and so genetics, we're seeing more and more plays a piece for a large part of people who stutter, and it persists.
There's anxiety. I know for me when I was younger, certainly if I was more anxious, like in school, my stuttering was always worse than it was like at home or with my very good friends. I mean, I remember that. What's the role of stress and anxiety?
Yeah, so it definitely plays a role. Okay, so obviously when we're more anxious, we stutter more. Both you and I know that. However, what we need to know is that it doesn't cause stuttering. Okay, stress does not cause the stutter. Anxiety doesn't cause the stutter. However, I like to say it's kind of like our weakest link. And so, right, when we're tired, we might stutter more. When we're anxious, we might stutter more because that's the first thing that gives. It's not the strongest part of our system.
Now, I had the opportunity to interview a high school student who I became aware of him at a faculty meeting on campus when one of my colleagues mentioned that the high school students she works with in the Bronx had entered a speech competition, and they did really well. And she mentioned that one of the winners was a young man with a stutter. And I have to tell you that caught my attention immediately. So I asked her if I might be able to speak with him, and she arranged for me to speak with him. So I want to run a little bit of my conversation with Noel Mullings, who is, I believe, a 15-year-old student at the high school in the Bronx. Tell us a little about the speech competition, and what did you talk about to begin with? What was your topic here?
The speech competition, I was very hesitant on entering due to my stutter, and my professor, Mr. sorry, he kind of assured me that I'd be fine, and I want to thank Mr. Mejia for doing that, because as I said before, I publicly speak more times than I would like to. And I felt like this would be a good challenge for me as a person that stutters. It would take me out of my comfort zone. And actually, the topic that I spoke about was why we should make college more cheaper.
Now, you said that you were first reluctant to enter the speech competition. Speaking for myself personally, when I was in high school, I think that is a time when my stammer was pretty bad, elementary school, high school. And I think I would not have had the courage to enter a speech competition. I'm going to be very honest with you. I think I would have been very anxious about doing it. What made you feel more comfortable with yourself so that you were able to go and do this? Yes, you said your teacher encouraged you. Is there anything else? Is there a support system that you have? Tell us a little bit about you and how you're dealing with this.
I think my greatest support system would happen to be my family, because my family, everyone in my immediate family has a stutter.
Okay.
My sister, my mother, my father, and it's just reassuring to have someone who knows what it's like to go through what you go through. And my sister also pushed me towards it. She said that if you don't want to do it, of course you don't have to. But for her, because my sister is someone I look up to, especially as a person who stutters. She's done like a lot for herself. So I thought that if I if I wanted to, I guess, make my mark or do something big, I would have to push myself, and I really felt like it was comforting to have people who really get it.
I want to focus on two things in this conversation with Noel. The first was his courage and his willingness to go forward. And I wanted to ask you, is that typical? Is that something you're seeing more of now?
Yeah, that takes so much courage to stutter and to speak publicly. Is it something that I see? Yes. Every person is different, I should say that, but I really believe that to stutter and to speak takes courage. And so almost everyone that I know who's doing that, to me, is demonstrating a courageous act.
The other thing he mentioned was his support, his family, and what enabled him to be comfortable. What was your take on that?
Having friends and family, absolutely, especially when you're younger, that supports you with your stuttering is critical. And so it makes so much sense to me that despite the challenges that he had the support, and that gave him the courage to step forward. Having a supportive family and friends, I can't say it enough. It makes all the difference in the world.
He also mentioned all the stuttering in the family. Did that surprise you? I know we talked a little earlier about genetic components, but what did you make of that?
Yeah, so it did not surprise me, because we do know that there is a genetic link when it comes to stuttering, and oftentimes more than one family member does stutter. I personally have yet to meet an entire family who stutters, so that's pretty unique, but I'm not surprised.
Now, in terms of your own experiences, did what Noel said resonate for you, or were your experiences very different as a child? What was it like for you? I know for me, stuttering was a traumatic event. I'll be honest about that, all right? But what was it like for you growing up?
That's a great question. It was tough. So everyone deals with it differently. I decided to deal with it by hiding it. And so because my stuttering was more mild, I could, play mental games and put on a persona to show that, oh, I'm just, shy or like tough or whatever it was. So it was hard because ultimately it compromised the expression of myself, and not just on a verbal level, but being me. And so there's a lot to say there. It can be traumatic not being your true self. Absolutely.
I know part of your work is in destigmatizing stuttering. And I want to ask you then, what are some of the changing attitudes? I know you've alluded to them that would have been different now, that are different now from when I was a child in terms of stuttering.
For one, we're talking about it more. And the way that we get rid of stigma, which is rooted deeply in shame, is we talk openly about it. It's just part of who we are. And so I believe that we've seen a lot of shifts on a larger scale, not just with stuttering, but with a lot of other differences. And stuttering is now one of them that we're allowed to talk, well, not allowed, but we are talking more about it, and there's more public conversation.
In terms of treatment, I want to go back to Noel for a moment because he says something kind of radical to me about treatment, and I want your take on that. And then I want to talk a little bit about what are the modalities that people are looking at right now. So let's go back to Noel for a second.
Actually, I don't go to speech therapy. I've the people who I associate with, the people who've had it, they've never found it helpful. I actually have a speech therapist in my high school, and we're very close, but I don't speak to her in a matter of helping my speech.
What's your take on that approach? He's not having any treatment at all, doesn't think it's very helpful. What's your take on that?
Sure. So that is a personal choice. And to his point, sometimes or oftentimes speech therapy is not helpful, especially if the therapist, who is always well-meaning but doesn't really understand stuttering and might just look at a surface feature and try to fix just the stuttering behavior. And in reality, there is so much more that we need to be working with the client.
What are some of the treatments that you've been using, things that you think would be helpful?
So there are different groups of thinking, and more or less what it comes down to is, I'll talk about what we work with. More or less, we want to work on stuttering through avoidance reduction. So like I talked about the layers of stuttering, we want to take off all the baggage of the stuttering with this kind of therapy, so we can actually work with the core stutter, work with the sound, and part of that is obviously working with the fear of the stutter, which leads me into something similar, but also a little different. And this is stuttering modification therapy. And stuttering modification is where we learn how to stutter more easily. And so we untangle the fear from the moment of stuttering, which is a process of desensitization. And following that, when we do come into stuttering, then we learn how to manage that moment with a lot more ease. And finally, if I could categorize it in three different groups, the third one is fluency shaping, and that more or less just sort of relearning how to speak. So it's a lot of the speech motor component practice, noticing your vocal cords, and kind of working with the sound to get on it just precisely. In my experience, fluency shaping did not work for me.
An interview with John Stossel, who's one of the well-known stutterers, the journalist, and he was speaking with a woman from your institute as well. She was a guest as well. And he, of course, had a very different attitude about his stutter. And that was, he wanted to overcome it. And he did whatever he could and retaught himself how to speak, I think he said, which was not my experience either. So people I guess it has to do with your comfort zone as well, or what's your take on that?
It's not a one size fits all. Okay. So for somebody like John Stossel, if he was ready, willing, and able to practice, and that worked for him, and there were no negative thoughts and feelings beneath the surface, which I don't know because I haven't asked him, so be it. There are some people that like to take that. However, what we know about stuttering is that, I'm going to go back to the iceberg. More or less, the tip is the stuttering behavior is kind of what you see and hear when I'm stuttering. But beneath the surface can be all of those thoughts and feelings and things I'm not doing, and you have no idea. So maybe I'm not raising my hand in class. Maybe I'm not picking up the phone to call, right? Maybe I am not going over to that girl or guy, whoever it is that you want to talk to, or that group of friends. And so for that, you can do all of the knowing how to speak fluently, all of those fluency techniques, but in reality, you're burying all of that shame. And ultimately, it comes it comes back to hit you.
I spent a lot of time in school looking down at the floor, hoping that nobody would call on me. So let's go back now then to this attitude and a different way of looking at it as something to embrace and to own. What are some of the things that you tell young people who come to your institute about dealing with their stutter?
First off, that they're not alone. There are a lot of us out there, some of us that we can see in here, yeah, and some of us who are not yet willing to be open, but it's not just you. That's the first thing. Another one is it's okay to stutter. So many of us have this belief that it's not okay, and we want to shift that. Now, it's okay to stutter doesn't mean that I like to stutter. It doesn't mean that it feels good to stutter. No, but if and when it happens, it's okay. And I think those two starting points takes off this burden of guilt and frustration and helplessness that often comes with stuttering.
Now, what should a teacher do in the classroom? I have some colleagues who are teachers and they really wanted me to ask you this.
Yeah.
Do you call on the stutterer or so that they don't feel marginalized, or do you leave the stutterer alone because maybe it's uncomfortable for them? What should happen in the classroom? What would you like to see happen?
Okay, so what should happen is that the teacher should ask the student, hey, look, I'm noticing that either, let's say you're even noticing the kid's not raising their hand, or I'm noticing that when you speak sometimes it's really, really difficult. I'm here to help you. What can I do as your teacher to support you? Basically, open up the lines of communication and let them know that you're a safe person and a safe place that they can actually share this with and together come up with the plan. We call this becoming an ally, and this is true for not just teachers, but friends. And so building that allyship so that the student now knows, all right, teacher, whoever is on board, and now I'm more free to be me.
Seems so basic, just ask. Goodness, I mean, yeah, that's great advice. Now, parents and families and what happens at home. Again, I'm asking you questions that I know have been posed to me as well. So, do you help the stutterer finish the thought? Sometimes people get impatient. I know they did with me, and they would just finish it up for me. Do you wait it out? I mean, what do you like to see happen that would make the stutterer feel the best or do the best?
Yeah. So with children is to treat them like you would anyone else. So do not finish their words. Keep eye contact and really create that space for them to speak and to know that they have the time that they need. Parents often deal with their own feelings of shame or guilt, of confusion, and that's normal, and that's okay. We encourage those parents to obviously get support, but it doesn't help to finish their words, and it doesn't help either to say slow down or to take a breath.
And in terms of encouraging your child to participate, I remember, not wanting to be in, I had two conflicting feelings. I don't want to perform in something because I'm afraid I'm going to stutter. And then was offended when I wasn't asked. Why didn't they ask me to be in the school play? There was like a no win for me as a child. So in terms of what you think should be happening for children now, should we encourage the child like Noel to enter the speech competition, or is it okay to pull back a little, or is it again a matter of asking? What advice do you give to parents and families who come to see you?
Meet the child where they're at and work with them. So pushing them when they're not ready can actually be worse than saying, hey, bud, it's okay for you to sit this one out. What can we do here? Sort of meet them at their point of strength and build from there rather than pushing them beyond what they're capable of today.
Now, the thing I want to also ask you is, before we are running out of time, and that is workplace education. I know that you've gone into the workplace. What is your goal there?
To help the colleagues and the supervisors, people who are working with others who stutter, to understand what stuttering is, so they're not thinking all the stereotypes such as, oh, this person doesn't know what they want to say, they're less intelligent, etc. To talk about it so it's normalized, and again, so that there's conversation, that we're talking about this difference.
Because we think of this as a childhood thing, but obviously there are many adults who have a stammer as well. So that's a really important thing. You are affiliated with the American Institute for Stuttering. Can you tell us a little bit about that institute, what services are being offered?
Yeah, so we are a non-for-profit organization that offers universally affordable speech therapy, stuttering therapy, and we work with children, teens, and adults who stutter. So really a wide range, and we do a lot in terms of, we have parent groups and children groups, we have groups for teens. We like to bring in researchers to talk about the latest research in stuttering. We really like to stay up to date with the cutting edge research and stuttering therapy approaches.
This has been so helpful. We are out of time. Hi, this was so informative and so helpful. I want to thank you so much. We're going to end the program by going back to Noel Mullings, who has some advice for young people who stammer. But I want to thank you again for joining us today, and tell our viewers that that's it for this edition of EdCast. We will see all of you in 2021, which we hope will be a better year for us all. Thank you again for joining us.
The best advice I could say is to be you, because your stutter is your stutter can be your best friend, but your stutter can be your worst enemy. And for a very long time, I couldn't stand my stutter, and I had to learn to accept what I have and see it more as a gift than a kind of weight, you know. And my stutter is, I believe it's something beautiful, and it's something that you can use to create opportunities for yourself, like this interview. And if you have a stutter, you shouldn't devalue yourself just because you don't talk like how other people talk. Of course, you may not be fluent as me and my associates are, but you can be more than just your stutter. You can be something big, something great, just like Joe Biden, Bill Withers, and many more.
We'd like to hear from you. Please send your thoughts and comments to cunyedcast@gmail.com.